Man like Mark Sullivan, the warrior self. Stay tuned for the thrilling episode. Woo!
A positive mental attitude can clear away all obstacles which stand between you and your major purpose in life.
This is the Snowboard Project featuring Mark Sullivan and the Bead. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project.
Hey, what's up, all you Snowboard Project listeners? A lot of you know and some of you don't, but we just sent out our sticker packs to all our supporters on Patreon just in time for you to slap a sticker on your new board. You sponsor us, and we're going to give you so much great content just about real life in snowboarding. But hey, if you haven't checked out patreon.com/the Snowboard Project, you can sponsor us and help us keep bringing you all this great content. We are talking about so much this month. We are talking about snowboarding bottom line. 2, we are talking about life experiences through snowboarding. We have a weekly news show and we just bullshit and keep it real in the snowboard industry. We are talking not just about tricks. This is bigger than that. This is about experiencing snowboarding for what it is, the adventure, the friendships, the progression on the mountain and off the mountain in life, following your passion in whatever aspect of snowboarding you happen to love. This podcast is snowboarding and making the most of every single day in snowboarding. So please visit us on patreon.com/the Snowboard Project and help us keep bringing you all these great stories from snowboarders just like you.
Welcome back to the Snowboard Project. I'm Mark Sullivan.
And I am the Beav. And we are coming at you again with some more episodes.
Yeah, happy holiday.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost Christmas. And so we're going to have a kind of a cool episode today.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Who do we got?
We got Jeff Galbraith.
All right. A name I've definitely heard, just being in like media and magazines.
Yeah.
But Jeff kind of is a guy that sits kind of on the other side of things. He has the what magazines does he have?
Okay, so he right now he runs the Snowboarders Journal, the Skiers Journal, and the Fly Fish Journal. But
really? The Fly Fish Journal?
Yeah. No, he actually lived right here in Ketchum, Idaho, for a number of years, and so he loves fishing, he loves snowboarding, and skiing is a byproduct of all that.
Okay,
I guess.
Okay, so and how do you know Jeff Galbraith?
So he was I want to say senior editor when I became the associate editor at Snowborder magazine.
Okay.
And so he was always kind of on the masthead of Snowborder before I started there.
Right.
And then I got to know him and become friends with him once I took a job in California and moved there to work at the magazine.
All right. Give me a few things that you guys talk about throughout this interview.
Well, I'd say the coolest part for me, I mean, you hear his whole history, right? Of like going to Snowborder, starting a zine called Jim that kind of got him started. And then the start of Frequency, which became the Snowboarders Journal eventually. A little bit lower hanging fruit with the name. But then I'd say like the advice, like the career advice, the life advice are the things that really I thought were the most interesting in this interview.
All right. Well, should we roll into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Jeff Galbraith.
Number 45.
All right, without further ado, I have Jeff Galbraith on the line. And Jeff is the founder of Funny Feelings, Inc., which is the publisher of Frequency, the Snowboarders Journal, the Fly Fish Journal, and the Ski Journal. Is that all correct?
That is correct. It's Funny Feelings LLC, though. We're as limited in liability as we can possibly be.
Right. Have you ever been sued?
Yes.
We won't
anyone in business anyone who's doing real business in the U.S. for more than like 5 or 7 years ends up in some kind of litigation.
Okay. Did you defend yourself well?
Well, we didn't actually litigate. Again, it's America, so you settle.
You settle, right? It's all about the lawyer fees.
Yeah, it was a business disagreement with an old printer. Regarding some pricing, and we settled it. We settled reasonably. I think both parties were cool with what we walked away. So,
okay,
like I said, you do enough contracts, enough business at some point in time, you end up with a disagreement that other people sort out. So. Yeah.
Well, when you first started out, you were like a content producer. Did you ever think that you would be the one dealing with all of like the business aspects of media as well?
Well, I mean, when I started it, I think I had my eyes pretty wide open as far as that goes. I mean, I'd been around enough media and around the business of enough media to have an understanding that, you know, they're different beasts. And, you know, I don't think I had any illusions that someone else was magically going to do that for me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's roll back the clock a little bit and start at the beginning, which is kind of like, to me, it was with zines. And in particular, you had a zine, and you could fill me in on the dates, but I actually still have a copy of it. Jim magazine, or Jim zine, out of Washington State. It was a zine during kind of the early days of snowboarding media. It was a DIY project. When did you do that, and what motivated you to do something on your own?
Well, I mean, I've always written and created and done stuff, you know, whether it was on my own or, you know, on contract for somebody else. And originally I started out, I mean, as a journalism major. And I mean, I wrote for my junior high newspaper. I mean, I've always done this. And then after I graduated from college, or about when I was getting ready to graduate, I did an internship for Transworld. And then I ended up going to work for ISM, International Snowboard Magazine, which was the first snowboard title out there out of San Francisco. And then I think there was a period of time between that and when I went to work for Snowborder about a year and a half later, where I wasn't on contract, I wasn't doing anything, and I just like kind of couldn't help myself. I'm like, I got to do something. So I just did a zine. Broncard helped me out a little bit of it, but I pretty much just did it. And you know, it's just a classic black and white duotone, literal cut and paste. And it was fun. It was fun. I still pick those things up and think they're fun, and people still have them and talk about them. So
yeah,
you know, I like doing zines because they're an artifact. It's as close as you can come to, you know, creating art via, you know, creating a written record. So.
Right. And what's the motivation? I mean, what was the motivation for it? Just to create? I mean, I was a zine maker myself. It was because I felt like, you know, the scene that I was a part of wasn't really appropriately represented in the kind of national media landscape. What was the motivation for Jim? It was just a creative drive that you had, or was it that you had something to say?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much like, I wasn't like, you know, big F you towards anyone or anything like that. I mean, I think it was certainly, at least ISM, I thought, had a really authentic voice. Mm-hmm. And, you know, people were making cool videos at the time. Mac Dog was starting to make videos. So it wasn't like I thought there was like, snowboarding had this, I think later it's got maybe a little culturally misrepresented, but at that time, it wasn't about like, you know, I was rebelling against anything as much as it was just, I couldn't help myself. You know, that's what I did. And, I mean, I was living in Bellingham at the time and still do. And, you know, all my friends either were in bands or, you know, did whatever, did creative things. And so, you know, I wasn't in a band, so I did a zine.
Cool. And then how many copies of that did you make before you got Snowborder knocking on your door?
I did 3, and I was working for Snowborder at that time still. Like when I first started out, like Snowborder actually bought a couple of ads, and then I did 3 issues, and yeah, I'm trying to think. We did the first interview with Jamie Lynn, which actually wasn't an interview with Jamie Lynn because I couldn't get a hold of him because he was traveling at that point so much, so I just interviewed all his friends and let them talk shit about him. And then I did an interview with Jim Rose, Circus Sideshow. The guy was in Lollapalooza, this freak show thing.
Is that where the name came from Jim Rose?
No, I did it just because he was kind of tripping on that too. He's like, is this a zine about me? And it was more just I wanted to give it a name, a personality. So, you know, they all have these intense names. At that time, they'd have like these kind of punk rock band names. And I like the idea of like personalizing it. So like, you know, it's a guy, you know, it's Jim. What would Jim do in this situation, you know?
Right. Okay. And so then
I really like the character from Taxi, Jim Ignatowski.
Oh, that's awesome. And so then you ended up, though, moving from Bellingham to San Juan Capistrano, or at least that area. to work at Snowborder. How was that transition, moving from kind of a mountain culture? I mean, Bellingham's a little bit an hour from the mountain, but to a place that was really kind of driven by image and surfing and really not snowboarding. Snowboarding was like the redheaded stepchild of Southern California action sports at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I knew it was going to be kind of an intense adjustment, as did my employers and everyone else. But so on one hand, I put it off as long as I could, but I also knew that if I really wanted to, have an effect on the publication, that I need to be there on site. And yeah, I mean, it was pretty heavy duty adjustment in terms of going from a somewhat bucolic college town of 70,000 to, I lived in North County, which is still, mellower than in Orange County for sure. But, there was definitely a cultural adjustment, which at the end I knew I was never ultimately going to make that adjustment. So, I did as well as I could for the time I was there, but I didn't, I didn't have any, I wasn't going down there with a chip on my shoulder or anything. I was excited to have the opportunity. And, when I started out as a redheaded stepchild of action sports, but within about 36 months of me landing down there, it was paying for everything in action sports.
Yeah, it seemed like that was like during the rise of snowboarding, really kind of basically on this bubble rise of multiple brands and movies, and it seems like just the sport of snowboarding itself was really in a phase of rapid exponential development and growth at that time.
Yeah, no, it was madness, man. It was like, I was the sole editorial person, and then Jeff Darnell was designing both that and powder. We didn't have a photo editor, and we were doing like 200 page plus issues, more than that. Like started out, we're doing like 6 a year at like 225, 230 or something like that.
So how did you pull that off as a one man kind of editor?
I was fucking driven, man.
Yeah, I guess so.
You just dive in and do it.
How much of the writing were you doing in those magazines? Like if I pick up my old copies, how many?
Fair bit. I mean, I think most of the day I was doing most of the big features. I mean, I had other people write. It was the hardest thing was trying to mine for other people to find that they could actually write, so I didn't have to write everything. And John Urban wrote some stuff, and then once I started making some connections with guys like you and Bridges, and there was other people that could write some stuff, but there was definitely a while there where and Paladini could write too. He was he took a little while to grow into the culture. He got it as a job primarily, but he picked it up well, and and obviously has been successful in the culture. But there was no illusion between anyone who was responsible for making sure that the content, that was my job. So
yeah,
I just dove in and did it.
So can you frame that for me? I mean, did most of the people you work with come from a snowboarding background and they backfilled the writing and the photography, or was it like they were photographers and writers and they're like, oh, I can learn snowboarding. That takes like 2 days.
I mean, at first it was kind of like that. I mean, just because, and I understand now as a publisher, it's like, you're launching a product and everything's kind of happening at light speed. And it's like, who do we have on hand that can do something that has a semblance of this? And then let's quickly start figuring out who we can bring in. And so at first, I mean, they had like Dave Reddick was like the photo editor, but, and it was, I'm sure he snowboarded before. And, and frankly, now that we do a ski magazine and being around both, it's not, the differences are more incremental than you might think. I mean, culturally at that time, they were a lot more different because there was, a bit more standoff between the two.
Yeah, what was that like?
Because at the end of the day, in terms of like executing, in terms of like, you need to go get an image. It's not like a great ski photographer was incapable of getting a good snowboard photo,
Yeah, what was that like though? Because like Powder Magazine was like this long established kind of voice of powder skiing, or the pinnacle of skiing, and then snowboarding's kind of like this new guy on the block, and that was really like the peak of like snowboarding versus skiing, where there were a lot of skiers who really kind of didn't like snowboarding or felt like snowboarding was stealing some of its thunder. What was that like?
I mean, I think like professionally there was a little bit of that because those guys, were bleeding pages and we were just ramping up like crazy. And, I think there was, a little bit of unease. The higher up publishers, not Doug, but like the people above him were definitely more skiers. But, they were always cool to me personally, the guys like Reddick and Rob Story and Leslie Anthony, those guys were always cool to me. I got along with them, and I skied too. So it wasn't, I didn't ski for a good 10 or 12 years. I went back and actually did a piece the first time I went skiing again in like 10 years. I did a piece for Powder. So, I had personally, I always had a great relationship with those guys. And I never had a beef against skiing because I grew up skiing and I always thought it was cool. I used to ski race. My grandfather was a mountain manager at Alpental and one of the founders at Alpental. And so, and then on the West Coast, I think we gave each other shit a bit, and maybe at Baker especially, but I think it was more of an East Coast thing where it was really, maybe a bit in Colorado where there was, serious acrimony, but it was never really like that, I think, in like the Cascades or Tahoe.
And not in the work environment either.
Not really. I mean, maybe a little bit. There'd be times when I could, if I felt like we weren't getting the resources we deserved or needed compared to skiing, I could get a little frustrated. But, then they'd hand me a ticket to Europe and I'd go shred Powder in Switzerland for 2 weeks and get over it pretty quickly.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that. You got to travel the world as a magazine editor. Basically, 1 minute you're going to college making zines or after college making zines and writing little stories. The next minute you're writing your own ticket to go around the world and write stories about the places you probably dreamed about. What was that like, making that transition?
That was the coolest part of it. I mean, that was the biggest motivation to do it. I knew I wanted to get out there, and that was going to be, a great means to do that. So yeah, I was really fortunate. I went to Europe like a couple dozen times. I've been to Japan, Chile a couple times, Australia, Tasmania. People have probably traveled further and been to cooler places at this point in snowboarding, but it was just a really magical time and era because it was also like, I was traveling with my friends. I was going places with Jamie Lynn and Dale Rayberg and, Chris Brockhart and Tom Burke, people like that I was like, I was friends with before when I worked at ISM and stuff. So it was just a really, really amazing time.
So what was like, you did that trip to Morocco, right? With Rayberg and Jamie?
No, I didn't go. I didn't go on that one.
Okay. So what was like, really an eye-opening trip that you did where you traveled somewhere and it really kind of made you look at snowboarding in a different way?
I'd say probably it was the trip I did with Craig Kelly and Temple Cummins and Brockhart and our other friend Brett Livingston to Chile in about 95, maybe 96, something like that. And I think I'd more changed my outlook on life when I came back. It was just a crazy adventure. I mean, we got a couple of vans and just drove around and slept on the beach and, got a few nights at hotels and ski areas, but for the most part, we just tore around with very little agenda. And, we ended up getting all of our stuff ripped off in this little village, and ended up like ransoming it back, staying there for like 3-4 more days, and then having the matriarch of the town was this woman who owned the radio station. So we just put up a reward. She started offering a reward on the radio station, and then realized at that point we were concerned we made ourselves like targets or something. So it was this really kind of crazy unease, and then we ended up getting most of our stuff back, but not our passports, not our plane tickets, a bunch of other stuff that was kind of a hassle. And so we were trying to negotiate a little down from that, and she wasn't having it. And Craig was finally like, oh, screw it. Let's just, we gave him some cash, and then he gave him traveler's checks, but didn't sign the traveler's checks. And so we're getting out of town the next day. We're getting ready to get ready. And, all of a sudden, like, dude comes running on the street, like waving these traveler's checks and screaming at us in Spanish. And we're just like, well, get up and all bail into our respective vans and just, blaze out of town. And so I think we wrecked a couple of vehicles on that trip. Like, we got our money's worth for sure.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a wilder, freer time back then. There wasn't like all of this like, Red Bull money or Taco Bell money in the sport. And so maybe that gave you a little bit more license to kind of take chances. And
I think ultimately it was like a good run up to what I'm doing now because I've carried that through. I mean, we take chances here. Like, I think like in a lot of ways, I think we take more chances than the other publications, and I think it's just from coming at it from that perspective, and also we're not really dealing in that world of, we're not getting grip loads of money from Red Bull or from Nissan or anybody. Our money's coming from snowboard companies, so that's what we're serving.
Hey, what's up, Snowboard Project listeners? I know you're probably sitting on the couch or in the car or somewhere with another friend of yours who is also a snowboarder, who is sitting there scrolling on his phone, on his Facebook, on his Instagram, and he has no idea what a podcast is. So here's what I want you to do. Here's the challenge. You need to walk over to your friend, grab his phone, scroll down and find that little purple podcast button that he has no idea has never opened, and I want you to press it. And you are going to do him the biggest favor of his life right now. You are going to subscribe him or her to the Snowboard Project, and then you're going to rate us 5 stars, and you're going to throw him his phone back and say, "You're welcome." They get to listen every week to 3 different stories, a couple from, other snowboarders just like them, or maybe an industry person that will give them the great information they want to know about design, or maybe about, marketing themselves, or maybe about just snowboarding and being a competitive snowboarder. And you're also going to get news, and news that's not just past the, next 180 or the 1620. You are going to hear things about the adventure, the friendship, and you are going to hear about the experiences of doing what you love, which is snowboarding. Hit the purple button, subscribe him, rate us, hand the phone back and say, "You're welcome."
So how long did you spend at Snowborder in Southern California before you left?
I was down there from, I think, 4 or 5 years total. It was like 92 to 96, 97, something like that.
Yeah, I think I probably started, I moved to California probably right after you left, because I don't think we actually crossed over in the office, aside from you being there for editorial conferences and coming in. And actually one of the reasons I went to Snowborder instead of Transworld was because I felt that, your voice, in particular, your representation of snowboarding was more authentic than it seemed like there was more driven by advertising, or there was just a closer relationship where you had these stories and these adventures that that I would have as a dirtbag snowboarder growing up and just going on road trips with my friends. And I think that voice was apparent to me, in the pages of the publication. Was that a byproduct of it being Surfer Publications, an independent publisher, versus Transworld Snowboarding and Transworld Skateboarding being such a huge thing? Or how do you, frame the difference between the two back then?
Yeah, I think that it was... Yeah, I think a big part of it was just the culture of Surfer Publications, and Pesman had just left there, but he had run the place for quite some time, and I think that it still had that aura of this kind of magical surf publication that had all these crazy wild stories from the 70s and 80s, and we weren't that far removed from that, so that legacy was there. Versus Transworld's legacy, they came in, they were the clean cut answer to Thrasher. That was their identity where they came in. And there's nothing wrong with that. There was a marketplace for that ultimately I think helped skateboarding, that they came in and did that. But so that was always their perspective. And I think to a certain extent that still carries through for both titles. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they've gotten a lot closer in recent years now that they're located under one roof. But there was definitely when I worked at Snowborder, we definitely took pride in having a little bit of a grittiness to the way that we approached what we were doing. And for better or worse. For sure.
And for me, that was the perfect, training ground and training ground for what we're doing here. And, I think we've carried that through. Actually, we just hired a new ski journal editor not that long ago, and he came up and was walking around and looking at our offices and our space and our people working here. And he's like, this is along the lines of what Surfer Pubs used to be. It has that vibe, And I thought I was really complimentary. I was stoked to hear that.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of a magical time in my life too, to be a part of that and to witness it before we went through 5 ownership changes in 4 years or 5 years.
Yeah, for sure. Because that said, now I honestly I couldn't tell you anything about them in terms of And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, because whenever I do pick them up, they seem to be doing a good job at what they're doing.
Yep.
But I honestly don't have the time or the bandwidth to, I mean, I should. It'd be pretty beneficial if I did get the other titles. But on the other hand, it just keeps me totally focused on what we're doing, you know.
Okay, so then you left. You moved back to Bellingham, or you moved to Sun Valley for a little while, and
I moved to Ketchum in I guess it was like 95, something like that, and then lived there for about 5 years. I just wanted to get back to the mountains, but I didn't necessarily want to go straight back to hometown. You know, I kind of wanted to keep, you know, new experiences going. And my family had always vacationed in Ketchum, and it just, you know, seemed like a cool town. And it wasn't like the shreddiest place in terms of compared to like if I'd moved to Jackson or something like that, but there's just something, you know, really cool about that place, and it's a great place to live. And I could walk the lifts, and I was fishing more then. I could walk to go fly fishing, and so yeah, I really enjoyed it. But then when I was getting ready to, you know, before we launched, you know, the Snowboarders Journal, which we originally launched as Frequency, you know, I was looking at it and feeling like realistically it was going to make a lot more sense for me to be, you know, on I-5 or Colorado or something like that. Ketchum's a rad place. I love it. It's just a nightmare to travel, especially out of the winter, you know. And it was knowing that, you know, the clients we need to speak to, you know, K2 is just down the road, Mervyn just down the road. And with a lot of the brands in Portland, I mean, that shift had kind of already taken place where those clients had shifted from Southern California to the Northwest. So it really lowered our barrier of entry if we just were, you know, and Bellingham made all the sense in the world because we're close to Baker. There's a college here, so we can get good interns and, you know, a whole lot less to operate out of than Seattle. So.
Yeah, it does make sense to not run a magazine out of this area. Let me tell you from firsthand experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, I think technically you can do these things from anywhere, but once you start, you know, adding a bit of a staff, and you know, you got to travel, and that was for me. That was the big thing. It's like the travel costs were going to offset anything else, you know.
Yeah. So talk to me about the beginning of Frequency. First of all, how that idea came about, and then kind of that process of that first magazine and getting that vision together.
Well, originally it was I was contracted by Snowborder after they went through, you know, a few buyouts, and I think it was EMAP at that time, and who they owned like some car magazines, some gun magazines, some other stuff, and they were trying to figure out how this property was going to fit within them, and Doug certainly was trying to come up with new products and you know, grow things, and so they wanted to do a quarterly, kind of a higher end quarterly along the lines of Surfer's Journal. And I was contracted to do that, and we got all the way. I brought it all the way to having most of the content pretty much done for the first issue and ready to send it to design. And then I was moving back to Seattle from Ketchum with my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, and she was a designer. She just graduated from Colorado State. She needed to be, you know, closer to the city for jobs as well. So we had all her stuff in a U-Haul behind us, and you know, they had also boosted my salary a bit because I'm doing this other project. So I'm like, sweet, I'm getting a condo on the lake. It's going to be a sweet summer. You know, we're living together, blah, blah. And then I get a call halfway across the drive in Eastern Oregon Desert, and Paladin's got a broken reception. He's just like, we're not doing it. I'm like, what? So apparently the higher ups had killed it, and I was kind of bummed. And I had to move into it. We moved into my friend's basement and, you know, made some lifestyle adjustments and but thought about it, and I was like, I've already done all the work for this, and you know, this is appealing. I'm motivated. I'd like to do this. And I had my lawyer look at the contracts, and he was like, no, you're free to do it. So we did, and we just launched the first issue.
Was that first issue made up of content that you had done for this other project that got killed, or was it content that you created afterwards?
Ultimately, no. Ultimately, you know, we looked at it. It was kind of like, you know, I want to start from scratch. This was good for this project, and I mean, I think physically it might have been somewhat similar but creatively, I think it was a lot different than what I would have created for them.
Yeah, and it was a very differentiated product when it first came out. Can you speak to that, like how you had it set up differently? Aside from the fact it only came out 4 times a year, it was actually like a different look, feel. Everything about it was kind of different than your newsstand type publications at the time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first issue was just complete anarchy. We had no idea what we were doing. I mean, I knew I had an idea of how to make a magazine, and I had done my part of making a magazine, building the content, but you quickly learn. I mean, when you're an editor or writer, you just think you're the center of the whole thing, and then you quickly, as soon as you get outside that, you're like, oh, that's like the easiest thing to do. It's compiling the whole, aggregating the whole thing, getting the production done, paying for it, getting it distributed. That's the trick of the whole thing.
Right. It's a lot more frustration involved with the publishing than the editorial. It's like you always can have an outcome with editorial. You can put together a story, you can take photos, but ultimately it's in the advertiser's hands whether they say yes or no.
Yeah, there's a certain amount to that. And it's just, I think ultimately, that, yeah, I mean, I had an idea what I was getting into, but, actually diving into it a bit is a different deal. So, and we were just working with the most third string crap computers, kind of like we do now. And, they're like frying out every 10 minutes, and Brunkhart's work process was entirely chaotic. And, we didn't really bid or negotiate the print bill to speak of at all. So we paid got at least 40% more than we should have paid. And,
right, you were just so green coming into the printer.
Yeah,
here's how we're going to make some money.
Totally. But it was, at the end of the day, it came out great. It came out, stunningly different than anything else. I mean, we used it was Ari's photo. It was a Polaroid of a video. It was like this totally obfuscated shot of Johan Olafsson doing a method. It was like this crazy digital silhouette, more like an art piece or something. We had no back page advertiser by design. We just decided we didn't want a back page advertiser. And then we screwed up and low res scanned a third of the Brunkhart's images. So at the end of the day, it was anarchy, but it was a beautiful anarchy, and it worked out really well. And I think it resonated because people came back, And the second issue I had to sell that thing. I had to sell the ads for that thing in October of 2001. So that was no small feat, just the fact that we did a second issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people don't get by one issue, especially when you have the kind of overhead you have when you're using offset presses or web presses. It's a pretty expensive thing, and you got to bring in a lot of money to just make it happen. Let alone paying yourself. That's a whole different story.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a lot, but now, 15 years later, we're doing it.
So that first issue with the low-res scans, did you tell your advertisers at the time, hey, we meant to do that? Or were you like, hey, this is part of the art. You might not get it, but one day you'll get it? Or were you we kind of messed up, we're learning?
Nobody said anything. They just thought it was part of the design and part of the art. I didn't say anything either.
Okay. So how many ads did you have in that first issue?
We actually did all right, man. I'm trying to think. We had... we didn't get burnt. That was a big crusher. It was we got to get burnt. And they didn't come in that front and side. And I don't know, it wasn't Koch. I can't remember. I think the DJ was just I think they just kind of figured it, and reasonably so. They're there's so much attrition. This thing, we'll wait and see if they do 2-3 issues. Right. And we had to do a couple of years almost before they came in. And now they've been front inside ever since. They've been a great partner.
Right.
But I'm trying to think. We did. Mervin's been in there since day one. They've been in every single issue. I'm trying to think. Vans was in there. Capita was in there. Snowcon. Northwave. Honestly, Airwalk. I mean, there's a lot of old brands that I just can't off the top of it. But we had healthy. I mean, it paid for itself. It wasn't like we made money, but it paid for itself.
Okay, and when were you able to get your first paycheck from doing this? How long into it? How long did you have to work on this project
Honestly,
before you started getting paid?
About 5 years later.
About 5 years later. So basically 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears before you Actually,
to myself.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of work. So what were some of the lessons that you learned by mistake or by any means that you kind of carry with you to this day from making those first issues of Frequency, the Snowboarder's Journal?
You can actually negotiate stuff. You don't have to roll over on everything. I think when you approach things like the consumer all your life before you actually ever make like a wholesale proposal or have a tax ID number or start working in that world, you just assume it's like, AT&T sends you a bill and that's the bill and there's no discussion.
Right.
Or, and generally speaking, there's a lot of accounts that work like that in business as well. But that's why we overpaid so much for the first, printing issues is that we just were afraid to negotiate. And then at some point I was like, no, this is all negotiable. And, I definitely learned that pretty quickly.
Yeah, the hard way too, because maybe you would have paid yourself a little bit sooner.
It's possible, it's true, but on the other hand, I only had so much bandwidth, and I spent all my time trying to negotiate things and not actually got it done. So.
Yep. So then, when did you launch the Ski Journal? Because then you took on a second publication. At what point were you like, okay, this is successful enough where I think I can actually expand my chips here?
I'm trying to remember the year exactly. I think it was 2006 was the first year we did. Yeah, that's right. I think 2006 was the first year we did the Ski Journal. So it was like 5 years later, 6 years later. And, it was just, we were in the same space and I never quit skiing. I thought skiing was cool. And, I was looking around at those titles and thinking, man, that there's more room here to do a journal type publication that calls attention to ski legacy and just focuses on the culture, is more than the equipment and, resort reviews and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's proven to be, that one's now going into like year 12. So, yeah.
Yep. And did it have the same growing pains as the first publication, or was it a lot easier to add a second publication to the first one?
A lot easier. It was still a lot of work, and there's still a lot of, there were still some nervous nights, but it was, once you've had that first birth, it's easier after that.
Yep. And then you started actually the Fly Fish Journal as well. How long has that been going?
That is, we're getting ready to do our 10-year anniversary issue for the next issue right now.
So 2 years after the Ski Journal you started the Fly Fish Journal.
Yep. And that actually was, I had, in the back of my mind when I started it, I had the idea of, this would make sense would be a multiple title. If we could find some things in a similar space that fit and make sense and that I am actually interested in and passionate about. And then I wanted one that was seasonal as well. So Fly Fish, anybody that's in winter sports needs a summer job.
Right.
So, Fly Fish was a good pick. So.
And was that successful initially, or did you have to kind of convince people? Because for winter sports, it's a shorter reach to go from snowboarding to skiing. Probably people were already familiar with it, but then when you go to fly fishing, that's a whole different world.
Yeah, no, it took a little bit more. That was more of a jump for sure, and that took more legwork and more doing. But at the same time, I knew that market would be even more ripe for that kind of thing, and I just knew at some level. I just knew we had to wait until the marketing directors retired, and they did, and people that are coming in that are a little more forward looking could look at what we were doing and going, yeah, that makes total sense. We should be in there. And Patagonia has been a huge partner on that since day one. That's made a big difference. Yvonne got it immediately and said, we're going to back this. So that's been a big part of it, I think, in terms of that there's a latent part of that culture that was waiting for something like that. Mm-hmm. So it took about a year or two longer for that one to catch more than the Ski Journal, but once it's caught, it's done really, really well. So.
Right. And like editorial speaking, the vision and kind of editorial concepts and content, are they similar across all three publications, or does each have really, a totally different kind of voice and address a totally different kind of market?
It's both. I mean, I've got a content director, Colin, he tries to keep the ball in balance for all three, and his background is more from winter sports than fly fish, but at the same time, he's been around fly fishing enough now. He generally gets, what those guys are doing with that. But more importantly, he's not there to necessarily nitpick, this photo of this fish or whatever. It's more of, is this congruent with what our mission is, what we do? Is this a journal? Is this a cultural Bible of this activity? Are we getting more bogged down? Are we doing too much, more equipment type things that would be more appropriate for other titles? Or, if we start bleeding too much on the fly fish side, if we start bleeding too much into like poetry or fiction, which we can do some of for those guys, it's a different culture. But, we really want to be a boots in the water, very culturally oriented type thing. So I think we're hitting that.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Beeve. I'm sitting here with Sully in a room just talking about snowboarding. If you can believe it, we're just a couple guys with a couple microphones. The idea really was to make a podcast for the people by a couple snowboarders, and that's us. But in turn, we need you to help us out. Go to patreon.com/the Snowboard Project, and just for like a couple bucks, maybe the cost of a beer, you can help us keep creating these shows. This month, we have so much good content for you. We have Torgeir, we have Nate Holland, we have Dave Schreiber, Kurt Heine. We have all these people in the industry, and these are interviews for you so that you can go listen to them and learn something about the industry that you are directly a part of. We want to keep creating them for you. So if you can help us out, 1, share our podcast. 2, potentially donate to our podcast. 3, rate our podcast. And 4, keep listening to our podcast, because the more of those things that we get, the more we can keep creating, the more cool ideas we can start tackling, and the more great stories we can keep bringing to you. So thank you for listening, and thank you for being a part of that. Patreon.com/the Snowboard Project.
So now, like, sitting back with about 15 years of experience, I look at it and it's like right when you decided to launch the first publication, Frequency, it's like that's really when the internet was coming on strong. And it seems like the internet has continued ups and downs, but continued to gain momentum to the point where really the mainstream publications are driven by the internet. And it seems like you've kind of maintained this vision towards print. And what's allowed you to do that?
Getting involved with the internet. I mean, we're not changing the rules here, and there's no question that the ability to grow and leverage and progress our brand is unquestionably tied to how well we're doing digitally and what our presence looks like digitally and how well we're marketing in the digital spaces. And, we're fully engaged in that now. I mean, we started out, I think, with print as our main driver. And I think in a lot of ways it will continue to be our main driver as far as the brand goes. But, I have a full-time AV guy now. We're making short films for all 3 titles. We're doing a lot more custom work now. We're doing some custom AV work for people. We've done books. We've done like 6 or 7 different books. We did a 50-year book for K2, 50-year book for Whistler, a 40-year book for Nike, mostly commemorative type stuff. And then we did the book for Jeremy Jones for TGR 2 years ago. That was, a book, accompanying book to the 3-part series. It's our digital engagement that's allowed us to go on and do that stuff now. And, we're doing digital editions with all 3 issues. We're getting ready to drop in the world of podcasts. The idea that the job of publisher, the job of editor is sitting in a room and compiling words and then compiling, magazines of words and nothing else and sending it out the door and expecting to grow your revenues that just doesn't exist anymore.
Right. So the revenue is based on like a juggling act between digital and print and custom publishing as well.
Yeah, it's a dynamic combination of all 3 for sure. I mean, the print, I think, is still is still continuing to be a driver, almost surprisingly at this point. And I will say that in the last 24, 36 months, I've felt a tick back up. I'm not really quite willing to claim, it's this impending, giant renaissance of print, but I think we're one of the few models that's going to survive, and not only that, but thrive. And our ad dollars are going to be up this year. There's no question in my mind our ad dollars are going to be up this year over last year, the print ad dollars. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing a re-engagement. I'm seeing brands that sat out 2-3 years ago to go and develop various other projects. I see a lot of those people coming back in now and buying spreads. And I think it's partly, the product itself. It's just that cool. People are compelled by it. It lives. It can, sit on a coffee table and stay there for years, as opposed to almost any other print product's going to get tossed out. And partly because it's good for brands. I mean, if everyone's just running the same 5 sites, and what's your competitive advantage? How are you distinguishing yourselves from other brands? Versus we have limited real estate, and there's only so many in there. And, if you want to be in the highest echelons of, culturally relevant brands, you better be in our book.
Mm-hmm. That's quite the sales pitch. Do you give them a hard sell like that when you're selling the ads, or do they come to that conclusion?
That's not a hard sell. That's the truth. A hard sell is giving people a bunch of bullshit numbers. So I never give people bullshit numbers. I just say, you need to be in there because we're the real deal.
Yeah, authenticity matters, right?
Authenticity does matter.
Yeah. And so let's say you're a kid, you're going into college, you get all this noise from quote unquote fake news and all this, and you're like, wow, but I wanted to be a journalist. How does someone become a journalist today? How do you go about doing that and eventually landing a job doing something you like it, at Funny Feelings LLC?
Now I got to switch and put my adjunct professor hat on, which I do sometimes occasionally at the university here. So
that's probably got a feather or two sticking out.
I would say, 2-3 years ago, it was all I could do to not just tell these kids to switch majors.
Really?
But now, partly because of our fake president, and partly just the dynamics of media, I think there's increasingly no more relevant job in this country than journalist.
Mm-hmm.
So, how you go about that and make a career is a different question. But, in terms of the relevance and import of the art and craft of journalism, I don't know if it hasn't been in no point in the last 40 years has it been more important than right now. But the traditional avenues, are changing for sure. I mean, I'd have a hard time taking a kid that's in the middle of a journalism program and saying you should totally put all your eggs in wanting to work for a daily newspaper. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, daily newspapers still exist, and for as much as people want to, our fake president wants to whine about the failing New York Times, they're doing better than ever, and so. Right. Those opportunities still exist. Plus, there's obviously a billion opportunities online. At the end of the day, you ultimately kind of have to become your own publisher, and everyone has to be a bit of a media ninja. You should learn to shoot good photos with your iPhone at least. You should, learn how to post stuff. If you're not, you can be a journalist on some level in the traditional sense, but you're going to have to bring more to the table than you would have 20 years ago, for sure.
Right. You don't just write words. You also should know your way around photos, a little bit of back end of websites. There's Absolutely. Really more pieces to it than just simply coming up with a compelling story.
Absolutely. I think that there's special cases where somebody is incredibly talented in one area, and as they advance in their career, somebody sees that, they may have the opportunity to just kind of switch off and say, now, I'm going to focus entirely on my writing. But to get in the door, you better be able to do, you better be media ninja.
Right. Okay. So now one of the things I do is I do some mentoring, and the question that comes up time and time again is well, what's the shortcut? How do I do this quickly without doing, you've made a lot of mistakes and learned from those or whatever. What's the shortcut? Do you have any shortcuts to offer for these kids out there?
Absolutely. I will offer the same words as my very good and wise friend, the late Warren Miller, you will work all of your life to be an overnight success.
That's very good advice, and I think that's actually kind of similar to the advice I give people. So, looking back, last question. Looking back on the whole span of the career, Gym Magazine, ISM, Snowboarder, Frequency, the Snowboarders Journal, the Ski Journal, the Fly Fish Journal, would you do anything differently?
I think the only thing is, I could break that down into minutiae with hindsight and say, oh yeah, I would have done this with this printer, or I would have done, this with this distributor at that time or something. But all of those are minor adjustments really. So probably not. The only thing, I would do, try and, if I were going to do it again, the only perspective I would have differently is just make sure you enjoy it. Have more fun. I think I've had good fun the whole way, but there's times when it gets really, can get stressful, and it's healthy to step back and go, yeah, it's just fly fishing, man. It's just snowboarding. It's not, we're not doing brain surgeon on infants or something,
Right. You got to learn from your mistakes and relish in your victories along the way, because they are, they're both great experiences to have, and there is no thrill of victory without the agony of defeat.
Well, relish your mistakes. Relish your mistakes. You don't learn anything from your victories.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Any parting words for whatever fans I may create out here with this podcast? Any parting words?
No, man. Just keep writing, keep enjoying, and for anyone that's supported the things I've written over the years, I deeply appreciate it. And for anybody that's supporting us today at the Snowboarders Journal, with a subscription, or just checking out our Instagram, or just whatever, just being a fan, we deeply appreciate that. That's that makes us what we do.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate your time, and I would wish you luck, but I think there's only actually bad luck, not good luck.
No, we're doing it. We're making our own luck up here, and thanks for having me on.
Cool. Thank you.
On behalf of Mark Sullivan and the Beeve, thanks for listening to the Snowboard Project. Remember, ride fast, take chances, dream big, and take action. And for God's sake, don't forget to support advertising-free snowboarding media at patreon.com. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project. The Snowboard Project.